We examined demographics and other factors influencing the Rondo study area, and I'm going to go over a lot of data, so I ask that you bear with me, and I'm happy to answer questions after the presentation. And I'm probably not going to tell you anything that you may not already know, but we want to get this part right because it really influences these, current and historic conditions really influence the policy and land use recommendations so that they are responsive and relevant to the community. So just one more preamble is that much of the data I'll be talking about is census data, and it's based on how people describe themselves. So, as discussed earlier, Rondo was historically a vibrant African-American neighborhood with a variety of residential and commercial uses, but the imposition of I-94 has caused a great deal of economic and social upheaval. And since the interstate was built, the area has experienced a significant decline in the share of Black residents. And this continues to this day. For example, in the census tract representing the area north of I-94, the share of Black residents has declined from 63% in the year 2000 to 47% in 2016, while the share of white residents has increased from 9% to 21%. And it's a similar story for the census tract representing the southern portion. So this bar graph actually shows the shares of population by race in these selected areas. This slide shows the median sales prices for single-family homes and condominiums in all of St. Paul. And as you can see, home prices previously reached $200,000 before the Great Recession and then fell off quite a bit. And they have recently recovered to about $200,000 again. But condominium prices continue to lag. I don't have historic data for Rondo, but a scan of recent home prices in and around the area show that they are pretty similar to $200,000. You can find pockets where they're quite a bit lower, and you can find pockets where they're higher. So to put this into perspective, the graph also shows the current median household income, which is $36,000. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the consequences of this condition. To understand how increasing housing costs are impacting households, we examine housing cost burden in the region. This is a measure of the amount of total household income spent on housing. And HUD defines housing cost burden as spending more than 30% of a household's income on housing. In the Twin Cities as a whole, about a third of households are experiencing housing cost burden. But this condition looks dramatically different when you take race and ethnicity into account. The bar graph is kind of detailed, but what it shows is 30% of white households in this region experience housing cost burden, while 53% of Black foreign-born households are experiencing housing cost burden, and 63% of US-born Black households experience housing cost burden. And there are many factors that contribute to housing cost burden, but incomes are a big piece of the equation, so lower income populations are very vulnerable to this. In the near term, it appears that housing cost burden is one of the biggest issues in the Rondo study area. Housing costs are similar to St. Paul as a whole, but incomes are quite a bit lower than the median for the city as a whole. While the introduction of the land bridge and accompanying policies have the potential to improve access to opportunity and jobs for existing residents, the improvements could make the area more attractive to higher income households, resulting in additional pressures on housing prices and rents. And this condition is reflected in the policy recommendations that will be summarized during the discussion of the tasks to be accomplished in the next 12 to 24 months, coming up soon. So based on this snapshot of current market conditions, we're recommending a mix of uses including a range of housing types, affordable and workforce and market, and flexible community-oriented spaces. And Bert's going to show some ideas of how this could look. under current market conditions, this is really a challenging location for a significant amount of retail or other uses like office space. And these commercial uses are more likely to locate on the nearby commercial corridors of Selby Avenue and University Avenue. So, but to really understand this and for a more detailed understanding of the potential for specific land uses, we're recommending that a comprehensive market analysis and financial feasibility analysis be conducted. And it's important that this study include an affordable housing strategy that looks at the production and preservation of housing in the broader neighborhood area, and that it include an employment analysis that targets industries for workforce training and job generation, and also that it includes a financial feasibility analysis of the desired land uses so we can identify if any subsidies are needed to get the kinds of development that is needed at this location. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bert.